Welcome to the Week 11 Locks DFS Thursday Night Football preview. I am Christian Hardy at ByHardy on Twitter, and I'm with Adi Narang at Really Adi on Twitter. This is our Locks DFS account up on the screen at Locks DFS. You follow us. We tweet our results from our optimal lineups, which we have for showdowns. Of course, for showdowns as we're talking about this video, but also NFL. NBA, NHL, as you can see right here. We did lose on DraftKings NBA today, but we've won 15 of the last 17 slates. Addie's lost, I think, 3 or 4 slates over the last 3 weeks in NHL. Injuries got me today in college basketball, but otherwise I've been perfect on DraftKings so far this year. So those 3 sports are all just crushing in our store. We've got an all-access pass to get our optimal items for every sport you play, DraftKings, FanDuel. And, of course, if you have any questions, you can just hit us up. Our DMs are always open on at LocksDFS, and we'll try to give to you as soon as we can if you have any questions about what we do or that sort of thing. And then also, as we always do, we have the giveaway for a free pass to any sport you choose, which is a $250 value for NHL, for NBA, for college basketball. Whatever you choose, you can choose any of those sports. All you have to do is subscribe to our channel just below. Subscribe, hit that subscribe button, like this video, and hit us with a comment. Just any comment on this showdown slate we're about to talk about as we go through it. Just kind of any thoughts you have or guys that you want to jam in or anything like that. Guys you think that are cheap that might be worth a play. And we'll talk about all of that as we go into this showdown, which is the Packers versus Seattle. Packers are 2.5-point favorites, 25.5 team total versus Seattle's 23-point team total at home. As you can see, the typical $1 million Thursday night showdown contest is up on DraftKings. It's a $10 entry fee. So, all right, Addy, where do you want to start on this? I say we kind of start with the captain spot at the top. Obviously, you got the 2 quarterbacks that are the highest priced players on the slate, which actually has happened less often than you would think. But with that said, where do you kind of think you're going to go in captain here? I mean, at the top, obviously, you've got, probably the 2 quarterbacks if you're going to pay up, I would think, is who you're going to want in the captain spots.
Yeah, so this kind of seems to me like a smash Russell Wilson spot. Russell Wilson, the most important note about Russell Wilson the past 2 weeks is that he is running again. Last week he had 9 carries for 92 yards. The week prior, I believe he had 5 carries for 41 yards. You can see the prior weeks he wasn't really running the ball. Anytime Russell Wilson is running the ball, this is the old Russell Wilson when he's running the ball, the guy that's the high floor, locked in quarterback one. Even though the pass attempts haven't really been there as far as the volume goes, I do think Green Bay's offense is talented enough and Seattle's defense is bad enough to keep this game competitive. Obviously the Seahawks are a 2.5-point favorite, but I think Russell Wilson will be throwing for a good part of this game. I think Russell Wilson, if I'm going and paying up in the captain spot, I really want to get him in. It seems like a smash spot for him on Thursday.
Outside of that, obviously, and if you have our optimal lineups, you've seen us do this a lot, is go down to these kickers. Usually we kind of end up on that in games where we feel like there's either high volume running backs or high volume receivers. I guess you could consider Devontae Adams a little bit in that mold. Maybe Aaron Jones, who he's getting more work. But other than that, there's really just not guys that are worth jamming in. But that said, if you're going to get both quarterbacks on this slate, you're probably going to need to get a kicker and captain.
Right.
So that's always an option. But I said let's just start off by building this lineup with Russell Wilson and captain and then go from there.
Right. One note on Russell Wilson is this Seattle offensive line is still awful. They rank 29th in the league in adjusted sack rate, so they're giving up a bunch of pressure. And Green Bay, actually, just this week, they overtook the lead for they're leading the league as far as adjusted sack rate, their defensive line. So they actually get a ton more pressure than we would realize. I do think that is a little bit mitigated by Seattle being at home. I just think offensive lines tend to struggle more on the road, especially bad ones. So at home, I think it'll help a little bit. And I also think that kind of helps his rushing floor. I do think that if this pocket breaks down, Russell Wilson's a guy who can do a lot just scrambling. So I do think that I'm not too worried about it, but that is an avenue that that could result in him not meeting value.
guys, position players, receivers, running backs. I know that you love Aaron Jones, obviously.
Yeah, let me talk about that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Aaron Jones, the Addy's action call. This was honestly my favorite call since the Calvin Ridley call on week 3. Because like Aaron Jones is just so talented, man. Look at that. Look at those averages
Yeah.
yards per carry. If you scroll all the way down, never below 5. Give this man touches, and finally Mike McCarthy's giving him the touches that actually he's not getting the touches he deserves, but he's getting closer. He got 15 carries with 5 targets last week. His target count has steadily improved since Ty Montgomery has been shipped off to Baltimore. He really is their primary threat as far as receiving out of the backfield. The Seattle run defense has gotten kind of they've been ran on pretty heavily the past 4 weeks. They faced a murderous row of running backs with Gurley and Zeke and I believe Melvin Gordon as well. But Aaron Jones fits the mold. This is a powerful run game behind the third best run blocking line in the league. I mentioned this on Addy's Action. Green Bay creates 3.3 yards per carry or 3.3 yards prior to contact for Aaron Jones, which is third best in the NFL. So I think Aaron Jones is a smash play this week. Seattle's missing KJ Wright as well, who's one of their better run stoppers at linebackers. So Aaron Jones will also play. I don't know if I'm gonna have him in my. Oh, by the way, he also has coach speak from Aaron Rodgers. I know it's up on the screen, but I mean not coach speak, but I mean captain speak from Aaron Rodgers as far as giving him more opportunities, and it's coming. So I do think Aaron Jones is a guy that should be in your lineup. If not in the captain spot, he should be in your lineup as far as the flex position goes.
One thing before we get into the rest of these middle options is just to touch back on kickers and just go down here in this lower range. I think really the only guy under kickers that we could even consider that I see is and we'll get to someone right above the kickers, but probably St. Brown. He's going to run as the third receiver for the Packers. Probably the only guy that you can consider down here to me. Do you have anyone else that you think could be in play down here?
Yeah. So it kind of lagged out there for me.
Oh, I was just saying, is there anyone else that's down here below the kickers, except for maybe St. Brown? But even last week, without Cobb, without Allison, he really didn't do a whole lot. I don't know where his snap count was out actually.
Yeah, so he ran. I think Devontae Adams ran 32 routes. Marcus Valdez-Scantling ran 31, and then St. Brown came in at 19 routes run. So fewer, but kind of what you would expect for the third wide receiver. I mean, if you believe that Seattle will take a lead in this game and you got a lot of Seattle pieces in your lineup, then I think you can run it back with St. Brown, assuming that they'll be in a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. That's the only thing really down here, though. Nick Vannett, he caught a touchdown, but last week, but his sort of routes run and target share was nothing really different. So below kickers, I'm not really looking at anybody.
Here is this is kind of what we were looking at last week with no Cobb, no Allison. Devontae Adams led the team in air yards. Scantling came in with 7 targets, which is why you see his price bump on DraftKings. And then I mentioned this earlier. I mean, I think Graham actually had a knee injury, which is why he only came with 1 target last week. I think he might have been banged up in the game, but he's fine now. He's not on the injury report now, but I think that's why he missed Tuesday's practice too. He had like a knock or something with his knee, which is why he came in so low. But anyways, I think Brown comes in. It will come in as like the 4th option. If you want to put Aaron Jones in there, maybe even the 5th.
Yeah. I don't think you really have to dig too deep, especially below.
Yeah, my point with that was kind of that on this slate now that you've got Russell Wilson captain, there's no options below the kickers. You're probably just going to go with the kickers.
Right. Yeah. I think kickers seem pretty optimal to me in this spot. You can't really touch the Seattle backfield. I mean, you can. I think I would go with Chris Carson to start it out because he was named the starter, but this is kind of a hot hand approach. Rashad Penny had a breakout game last week, so they're going to give him touches. Mike Davis was awesome last week as well, so he's going to get his share of touches.
I mean, just look at this quote from Carroll, and pretty much tells you everything you know about these Seattle running backs. When everybody's healthy, not everybody's going to get the ball a lot. That's just the way it goes. So we'll figure it out. Sounds
right.
Pretty gross.
Right. It's pretty gross. It seems like a hot hand approach, and Chris Carson's going to get the first shot at it. So I think he's probably the most playable out of all of them. But in my opinion, I actually like David Moore more than any of these Seattle running backs. And he's sitting there below all 3 of them. David Moore's a guy who I mean, the past 2 weeks, he led them in air yards. I believe it's the past 4 weeks, actually.
Yeah.
He leads them in air yards. He leads them in targets, leads them in weighted opportunity rating. Um, I mean, he kind of suffers from the fact that Seattle doesn't really like to throw the ball too much. But again, in a game that we talked about should be fairly competitive, I think David Moore is. I mean, to me, he seems like probably the guy I'm going to definitely get in as far as like cheap players on this slate.
Yeah.
He's my favorite option. I think I like him more than both kickers as well. I think the kickers. Anytime I look at kicker, I kind of assume like 7 to 8 points, and I think David Moore can beat that. He never ran more than 22 routes in his entire career. The past 2 weeks, he's ran an average of 38 routes each of these weeks. So it's coming for him, and he's a talented player as well. So I really like David Moore. I think he's going to be probably all my
His opportunity at this price is definitely way too high for the cost.
yeah.
Especially if you're assuming they go down in this game, which Vegas seems to think. So, if we want to plug him in with the kickers, because that's kind of what we were looking at earlier, because that's going to let you get Aaron Rodgers. Basically, what you're going to be deciding on here, to me, if we end up with Russell Wilson and captain, if you put David Moore and Aaron Jones in, assuming they get a spot on your team, those are the two guys we'll probably have in our flexes. Is basically you're going to have a decision between you can get you can't get Aaron Rodgers with this team. I thought you could. Why was I? This was the Devontae Adams team, wasn't it? Yeah. So you pretty much that's what you're going to have is this is going to be a Devontae team with Aaron Rodgers fade, which Adams is going to have the highest share of the Green Bay pass offense for sure.
Right. I mean, there's a ton you can do from here too. You could just drop Jones to Valdez-Scantling, and you can get Aaron Rodgers if you want. So
yeah. Are there? How do you see kind of the Green Bay receivers in this game? Like, do you see them as cash options, or do you see them as just kind of like you'll probably be playing them more in GPPs or that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's a condensed target share as far as it's really just Valdez-Scantling and Devontae Adams as far as wide receiver goes. I think in my opinion, I'd rather get Aaron Rodgers in here than Devontae Adams. And so that kind of leaves me with Valdez-Scantling if I were to target a wide receiver there. I do think Devontae Adams will come in extremely chalky. We tend to see that ownership just like we saw with Zach Ertz. You know, he was an 11K player for the Eagles, with all the other options kind of being like 8K and below, and we saw him come in as extremely chalky. So I think Devontae Adams will probably be the same. But for me, I think I'll go with Valdez-Scantling for 4K cheaper and see what that lets me do with the rest of my positions.
Yeah, I mean, that like Adi said, you can kind of do that if you want to get Rodgers in. I mean, to be fair though, Jones for 1,200 more than Scantling sounds like a bargain almost to me. 1,200.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously it allows you to get Aaron Rodgers, which is a lot. I mean, you're talking about like especially if they go down a guy who's going to do a lot on a team that doesn't love to run the ball either. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, definitely solid. And Seattle also is like one of the I believe they're the bottom 10 in the league in adjusted sack rate. So Aaron Rodgers should have a fairly clean pocket to work with.
That's kind of a build we can go with Wilson and captain. If we want to look at another one with a kicker and captain and just kind of see how it builds out. I think we built one before, but like Crosby here, putting a kicker captain, like we said, kind of always is an option. We plug in our two guys that we know we like in positional players, in David Moore and Aaron Jones. And then you plug in both the quarterbacks because that's kind of what you do when you get a kicker captain. And then you've got Doug Baldwin, which we haven't talked about yet. But before we got on here, we kind of talking about his matchup in the slot against Green Bay.
Right. So he is their primary slot receiver, Doug Baldwin is, despite the fact that Tyler Lockett actually ran 35% of his routes from the slot last week. Doug Baldwin is still their slot guy. They signed the Packers signed Bashaud Breeland to come in off the street and be their slot cornerback, and he ended up pulling his groin, so he'll probably be out this week. And they're already tremendously banged up. They're missing Nick Perry. They're missing Nick Perry. They're missing Kevin King. They're missing their strong safety, Kendrell Bryce. And so I think this Russell Wilson and this passing game is just – and it fits well because the running game is so muddled that I'm totally – comfortable going all in on this passing game. I think most of the work will go through them. as far as like the touchdowns, etc. So I think Russell Wilson. I think double stacking it with Moore and Baldwin is totally fine, and Lockett as well. I mean this Green Bay secondary is completely banged up. So I'm very high on Seattle here.
Another small change you can make on this team with this variation of the team is going down from Moore, which who obviously we love, but just going down to him, and then if you want more Packers exposure, going to Scantling.
Right. That's pretty cool too. I
Yeah,
actually like that.
yeah. So
It kind of feels like what side you're on. If you're on Seattle, then go with the Seattle receiver. If you're on Green Bay, go with the Green Bay receiver.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I agree.
Mhm.
But I mean, honestly, this is honestly a pretty simple showdown. I mean, just because you're not really looking at these Seattle running backs as cash options at all, like I don't think you're going to see any of them get a lot of ownership in cash. I mean, it's truly a three-headed backfield right now with Coach speak for Penny, with Carson starting, with Davis with third down work. Like it's a mess. Like so
Right.
that basically you're looking at a running back one, which on a lot of showdowns is going to be the top option. Now you've got one team without a running back one, so
Mhm.
it kind of makes ownership a little bit more clear and kind of your construction a little bit more clear as well. But I think that's pretty much gonna wrap it up. I mean the only two guys we haven't even talked about is Lockett and Graham. I think Graham doesn't seem. I mean I don't know. I don't even know what to think about Jimmy Graham, to be honest with you. Uh,
I mean,
he
you
hasn't.
got the
He's never felt like a significant part of this offense all year, really, unless everyone was out.
right. I think the biggest thing with Jimmy Graham is KJ Wright's absence. He also, despite in addition to being one of their better run defenders, he also is their primary tight end defender. So I do think that Jimmy Graham benefits from his absence. It is you got the revenge game narrative. That's the thing.
That is a
Back
thing. Wow.
back in
Yeah.
Seattle. He didn't really run too many routes last week. He was a little banged up, and they sat on a pretty comfortable lead, and there was really no need to force it to Jimmy Graham with how easily it was for them to move the ball through the ground with Aaron Jones that week.
True.
So I do think Jimmy Graham's in play, and if come 8 p.m. you can tell that he's not going to be owned. I think that's I mean, you could definitely get 2 touchdown upside with him, so definitely
Yeah.
in play as well.
Um.
But yeah, I think that's really it. Tyler Lockett. We talked about the deficiencies in the Green Bay coverage, so he kind of benefits from that as well. He runs more routes out of the slot than I think people realize. 35% of his routes, that benefits him as well because slot wide receivers have ripped up Green Bay and will continue to do so with the injuries there. So he's a good play as well. The only thing with me and Tyler Lockett is the fact that I think that there's not a massive drop off between Tyler Lockett and a guy like David Moore, and that's
Yeah.
he's half the price. So I don't. But again, that'll I think most people will have that realization, which will end up with lower Tyler Lockett ownership. So he's a good way to kind of differentiate from the chalk with a good player.
Yeah. I think that's kind of where people will be as well. I would assume. Although something that could give people off Doug Baldwin is just the game logs. Also, we didn't
Yeah.
mention about Doug Baldwin that he's saying, although he's been saying all year that he's been feeling I guess the injury to his knee all year. He said he's healthy, so I mean that's a benefit too for him. He said this week that he doesn't feel badly at all. So I mean, if you get full 100% Doug Baldwin at 7.2K, it's pretty nice. So,
Yeah, I mean Doug Baldwin's still dusty just because of age, but if he's saying he's healthy, I believe it. And I mean the target count's never going to be anything crazy because of just how um, Seattle doesn't really try and force the ball in the air. But anytime they're forced to, which I do think we could see Russell Wilson throw the ball like upwards of 35 times this game if it goes back and forth. And I believe it's like the 5th highest total on the slate, so it is a pretty high over under. So
it's a pretty high total, yeah.
yeah, so I think we could see this game turn into somewhat of a shootout. I mean, neither one of these defenses are that good. So, and if that does happen, then I'm going to want a lot of Doug Baldwin because he'll get his looks in this offense for sure.
For sure. All right, guys. I just realized literally just now that I have not used my mic this whole time. So if I sound like shit, I'm sorry.
It sounded pretty good. It sounded pretty good.
Didn't use my mic or my headphones. Wow, embarrassing. All right. thanks so much for watching. If you're not following Locks DFS on Twitter, follow us. If you need optimal lineups for this showdown, if you're struggling making your own, we've got you. LocksDFS.com. You can cop a week pass, a month pass. All those options are up in the store. And, of course, all of the other passes as well. And then lastly, just, again, comment, and you'll have a chance to win. Comment, subscribe, and like the video, and you'll have a chance to win a free season pass from Locks DFS. So with all that said, we'll be back with Taylor's NBA video will be up soon, as well as more NFL content later in the week. So subscribe, keep watching. We appreciate you guys, and we'll see you guys soon.
Peace.
See you guys.